Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, my honor is to welcome our guests, but I wanted to stop first and just express my thankfulness for a couple of things I deem very expensive time. I really honor time. I've learned how to love it and be a part of my life and respect and give time honor. Each and every one of us have been given 24 hours. What we do with that 24 hours will speak volumes of who you are. The other is the journey. The journey houses so much. So much information is there that created us, the power that the individual is today. And so we want to give honor to Alice for coming and sharing both of these very expensive commodities here with us at Threads of Enlightenment. Alice, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I do appreciate
It
it.
is an honor.
I'm excited to have
I
a chat.
know. Later, folks, we'll tell you what happened, what we've been doing. But tell the folks, how do you serve, Alice? Because I've been telling them that this is a position in life that one must strive to get to, because it's restful. There's joy. There's much there, and I would love to have them come and experience it. So, how do you serve mankind?
Well, I am serving through the book that I've recently published. Basically, it's my story of a really transformational event that happened to me, and it's something that's very universal. Obviously, I'm telling my story, but it's a very universal. Many universal events like divorce, losing my adopted children, getting sectioned in a mental hospital, being attracting somebody into my life that was very negative, and then transforming all of that into my new life, which now I live in Bali, and I've learned sound healing. I've come back to sound and writing songs and playing the harmonium and singing mantra. So all of these things that I've discovered through what happened to me, through starting a whole new life. And during the process, I mean, as soon as the initial event happened, which was very sudden, happened in 2014, basically my life changed overnight. So it was like quite a complex situation, complex trauma to deal with, stress, whatever you want to call it. But I knew, because I had a sort of spiritual opening, and I knew, because I was told by Spirit, that I was going to be okay, and that there was a gift in my experience. So that carried me through all the events that happened later, which obviously I had no idea were going to happen. But yes, so that's how I'm serving, is I'm sharing my experience and connecting others. And, through what I've learned about how we're all creative and how being creative is such an important part of our lives, because it connects us to our true self, to our soul, which we're all creative beings. And by doing that, it brings us the most joy, we could have. And it helps other people, brings more harmony into our lives. So yeah, sound healing has been a major modality that's helped me through, and also using the voice and singing. It's so liberating. It's so much freedom in singing and speaking your truth. And yeah, I mean, I knew I had to write the book, and I did write it quite quickly. But actually putting it out to the world, it took me 7 years. But that's okay, because I came through it and I've done it. And I'm very happy now I have done it. But I was, that was a process to come through.
Well. Pregnancy, when one is pregnant with things, you just have to allow the growth of that life. And when it's time, it will come forth. But one of our customs here, Alice, is to go back into the time machine, as they say, and revisit one of the very first spaces that we occupy as individuals while we're moving through life. And that space is the family. We're there residing for a few years, maybe until our 20s and so forth. And then we move forward in our life to create our world. Invite us to your family unit. What was that like?
Well, I was the youngest, or I am, the youngest of six children. My mother loved children, and she had 6 children. So So yeah, I was the youngest of six, and we lived in a, well, it was actually technically a village in Hampshire
Hmm.
in England, where I was brought up, and yeah, I had kind of a lot of
Yeah.
parenting. I had my parents parenting, and I had my
Yeah.
siblings parenting, at least three of them, I would say. Um, but yeah, I had a sort of Catholic upbringing, so church every week and Catholic schools, and yeah, so I was sort of a Catholic
Yeah.
bubble really, and but yeah, a lot of play, a lot of riding my bike and roller skating and living out in nature, with trees and nature and the beach, and so yeah, very sort of I don't remember that much, but it seemed pretty carefree, playing with my dolls and my doll's house and all these things, and living in an imaginary world,
Yeah.
really, which I kind of enjoyed.
So here, this girl that has been surrounded by parenting, mom and dad, and your three siblings, and you're having a good time, and you're moving through your life. You're growing. You're now in your teens. You're in school. Having all of that parenting and the freedom that you've expressed, how was this young girl in relations to others? How did she interact with those that are in high school?
Yeah, I was quite shy, but I had friends, and yeah, I was pretty happy at school until I got to about
Hmm.
13. And then I do remember my next door neighbor died, and I think that had an effect upon me. Um, and then I didn't really like
Hmm.
school that much. Um, and yeah, I was excited to leave school and actually leave home and
Yeah.
move away and move to London. So yeah, I rebelled. I mean, I had spiky hair. I don't think that's really rebellious, but but I guess they
Yeah.
thought it was. Um, yeah,
So the death of this neighbor you said was impactful to this young girl that caused her
yeah.
even to make some drastic changes. What did it do to you to cause that drastic change?
Yeah, I mean, I'd known her since I was obviously, since I was a baby. So she'd always
Yeah.
been around, and it always been always somebody that really loved me. And she used to put plasters up when I got, cuts
Yeah.
and things like this. So, yeah, I guess sort of disillusioned me and made me feel depressed because no one really spoke about her anymore. And although we weren't living next door to her anymore, we had moved a few miles away. I did feel a huge sense of loss and kind of
Yeah.
disillusionment, I guess,
Disillusioned
which came out in my
with
behavior.
who was it with? Because you being a
With,
part of the church,
well, with
and
life, I guess.
yeah.
With life,
Oh,
with just life, I think. I don't think I blamed the church or
yeah.
religion. It was just, I just felt this enormous sense of loss and I didn't know
Yeah.
how to deal with it. I think that was
Okay.
most important.
Here's
I felt a sense of
Yeah.
aloneness.
Wow. Here you are. You have lost someone precious, and you guys move. And moving to that new location, you said that you were the rebel in the sense that you dressed a little different, and they thought you were the rebel. When you went onto your own, what was that like when you began to step on the stage, if you will, on your own, apart from your family?
Yeah, I mean, I felt quite strong, really, because I was the youngest of six. Everyone was older than me. Actually, everyone had left
Yeah.
home anyway, gone to university or gone to get a job. So it felt normal. Couldn't wait to be a
Yeah.
grown up and get out there in the world. So I moved to London, and I got a job. Well, before I left, I got a job in a hotel doing
Hmm.
reception, and my boyfriend had moved up to London too. So actually, I mean, I suppose maybe I wasn't as confident as I thought, but I was determined, and I just thought this is what we do, and it was exciting to live in London, and yeah, I lived there for 25
Wow.
years, so it was the right place for
So
me.
25 years, here you are, you've lived in London, you're in the right place. What happened? Because you're living in a totally different place now.
Yeah, well, a lot happened in between time, I can tell you. I mean, I don't know which part you want to know about,
We'll
but
take the beginning of it.
yeah, I mean, okay. Well, the beginning of where? Oh,
Yeah,
of how I got here. Well, basically, I had to start
yeah.
life again. I mean, I feel like I've had many lives in
And
one
why
life.
did you have to start life again,
And
Alice?
in
Why
20,
did you have to start life again?
because obviously I was married, not obviously, but
Yeah,
I was married, and I've been married for 5 years. And yeah, my husband woke me up one morning and said that he didn't want to have the children or myself. We were adopting, we'd been going through a 2 year process to have two adopted
yeah,
children, two siblings. And basically he changed his mind, and he didn't want me or the children. So it was a huge, huge shock. Um, I knew he had been acting a little, stressed. But they say that all the social workers say it's the most stressful time of your life, going through this period of adoption when you're just about to meet them and integrate them
yeah,
into your life. So it's completely normal. And also his father had Alzheimer's, so there was a lot of stress around that. So you know, yeah. So basically, literally that day, my life changed, and he went off to work after telling me. Um, and basically, yeah, I had to find my way, which took a few years. But I always had this vision that I would find a new
yeah,
place. And I loved being over the other side of the world. I traveled around Asia and Australia. And so, yeah, I went
yeah.
traveling in
Hmm.
2016. And I went to Nepal, saw my sister there, traveled around southern India. And then I had to find somewhere to come to. So Bali, I'd been here
Yeah,
twice before. In fact, I'd honeymooned here. And so I came back to Bali, and Bali was just the right place, the right time, and everything just flowed into place. And I didn't think I was going to
yeah,
live here forever. Or I still
yeah,
don't know that. But anyway, I ended up staying here for 6 years, and I'm still
yeah.
here.
So here you are, traumatic situation with um, losing a husband and a family that you were
Mm.
emotionally were expecting, and that trauma sent you off to travel and experience life, and you landed in Bali, and here you are in Bali. I'm sure you're still navigating those emotions and so forth, and looking at your life. What did you see, Alice, when you began to look at yourself here in Bali, a new world? Uh, how did this young girl,
Yeah.
this woman, saw herself?
Um, yeah, basically, I just love the frequency of being here. There's something special, which I came here when I was in my
Hmm.
30s, and I loved it. So it was just something that drew me back when I got engaged and got married and had my honeymoon. And basically, it was the energy, it was the frequency, it was the beauty. Um, and to me, Bali feels quite
Yeah,
magical. um, Going to the temples and having blessings, and just the rivers and the trees, and just the whole energy, because everyone is always praying and doing offerings. So it creates this very intentional energy, which when you come here, you can feel
hmm,
it. So it's sort of, I think Bali's a place where you come and it holds you, or it says, sorry,
yeah,
you need to go. And so I went to a tarot reader, and she said to me, "You've had a past life here. You can live here. Bali will have you because you've been here before." So, I mean, it seems to be the case. Bali does
yeah.
hold me. Yeah,
And so here you are
it's very healing.
in
Yes.
Bali healing, and it's holding you and cuddling you, as they say. And you're looking at your life, and you're amongst the energy of all of the meditators and all the different energetic practices that you see in the spiritual world. What began to happen to you as an individual amongst all of that energetic movement and the comfort of Bali?
Yeah, I mean, it just allowed me to calm. It allowed me to come to a
Yeah,
sense of peace, and it allowed me to explore. um, I came across the pyramids of Chi, where you have sound healings, and I would go there regularly. And having the sound going through my body, it just allowed me to release a lot of the tension that I'd been
Hmm.
holding, and a lot of the trauma and the grief that I was experiencing. So it brought me beauty being here. It brought me sound. I used to go to kirtan, so I did a lot of
Yeah.
singing, so a lot of expressing, and yeah, it basically gave me a whole new life.
Right. So in this new life, what were some of those things that you discovered that you brought with you that you had to give up some of those um, beliefs, if you will, when you were dealing with the music and having that energy transform you? What did you see and the trauma that caused because those are some serious traumas, Alice, that you have to uncover
Mm.
and yet deal with it to deal with it in the sense that you're allowing it to be released out of you. How was it just the music, or did you bring other tools into your life to assist you as you discover those traumas?
Yeah, I mean, I also did a lot of
Yeah,
breath work, a lot of group breath work, which really helped a lot. Um, I mean, basically, I wrote the book in the UK in 2015, but everything in the book, it sort of shows what I did to get me through my
yeah,
experience. So, journaling was a very key thing that I did, um, because by writing, I could express myself. By writing, I could write through a panic attack or whatever was happening to me. Um, a friend of the family said to me when sort of a week after the trauma, he said, he was going to help me. And he said, right, you need to get a book, you need to write everything down that's happening to you and put a date on it. And that is evidence of what you're doing and how you're feeling. So I did. I'd already journaled before, but this journaling was a way of self expression, was a way of trying to unravel and understand how this thing could possibly happen to me, you know. Obviously, I understand people have affairs and people change their mind. I
yeah,
understand that, and that's okay. But it was just the day before when I felt such a spiritual connection to the
yeah.
children that to lose that and not become a mother because of that, and yeah, that was I was also losing the opportunity to be a mother, which was, obviously a very difficult emotional experience obviously that's parts taken
Yeah.
many years, and now I can see the benefits, and maybe I wasn't meant to be that because obviously it hasn't happened, but also yeah, I've come to accept that that's okay. Obviously society, like you said earlier, it programs us into, oh, you need to be married by this time, you need to have children, you need to have a good job, you need to have a house, you need to have this, you need to have that, you know, and to come away from all of that expectation or judgment from the Western world to come and live here and to be
Yeah.
free from all of that, um, yeah, was very liberating. And also writing my story was obviously very liberating for me. Sharing it was another level of
Yeah.
acceptance. Yeah, because knowing my story for me
Yeah.
was okay. Telling other people, sometimes it was okay for them,
Yeah.
sometimes it wasn't. But actually putting it out, um, then I really had to, I had to really feel like I really am sharing something very personal. But now I feel okay about it, which is, it's amazing how you can change. It's amazing within 6 months when I first put it out, I was like, am I crazy doing this? Telling people what happened to me, my most personal things. I like to be private. I like my privacy. And then it's like, but actually, I feel like maybe that's the way it needed to be, that I needed to really give something of
Yeah.
myself, not just hide away. And yes, that happened to me. Yes, but instead of actually sharing it, it's another level of creativity and
Yeah.
connection. which is what I feel are two really important points when it comes to navigating life and difficult
Yeah.
experiences that we all
Yeah, you
experience.
mentioned several tools that utilize people can utilize. The journaling. I remember when someone had told me to do that, and I had just gotten through a breakup, and I remember reading that several years later, and I was like, "Oh my God, that boy was a mess," you know. And it was really insightful to see where I came from and what happened to
Yeah.
and look back and see that brokenness that took place. But it is one of the most powerful tools that one can utilize in order to help assist them in their personal growth. Chanting and the music, of course, is one of the most powerful out there. When you began to chant and different things like that, if you understand the purpose of it, it can put you in certain states, and when you're in those states, you can travel, you can communicate, you can, all kinds of stuff happens when you are in that state. And usually when because of how we are, and when you're chanting and stuff like that, the repetition of the sound will escort you into that space of the spiritual realm, if you will. And so, um, those are tools that are that Alice is talking about, that she brought into her space to assist her to move from darkness to light and freedom, as she mentioned. So here you are, this girl, this woman, actually, she has experienced much. She lost one of the things, as you stated, you wanted to be a mom, and to have that taken away from you, you had to heal from that trauma. um, Talk to us about that, because there's women out there that have bought into the programming, and many of them may have wanted kids, but they're apprehensive about it, and there's much disturbance within themselves. Can you speak to that, Alice, to help that woman to come into a space of rest?
Well, I mean, that's that's quite a lot to ask, really. It's very
Yeah,
individual, and yeah, I mean, I'm always when say some of my friends who've never wanted to have children, sometimes I really feel like, God, they're so
yeah,
lucky, you know, because like it's something we don't have a choice. Well, we do have a choice. I mean, you know, a lot of people choose they can just get pregnant with someone and then they can just bring their child
yeah,
up alone, and you know that's great, and you know you can still have a child, you know, if you want to through you know artificial insemination or whatever, um and people, you know, I know people that have done that too, but for me I wanted to have the person, the partner, so and the
yeah,
relationship, and so you can't always, you know, you can't always plan to have that.
yeah, yeah,
So, you know, I feel that if people do want to have children and they can, that they can have them on their own, move into community with others. You know, that is all very possible. Because I know there's something about really wanting to have a child. You can't really, I don't think I could even speak to that because it's so individual.
yeah,
And I really, you know, everyone is individual on that. And it's such a deep feeling,
yeah,
it's such a personal feeling. Yeah, I don't know if I can really speak to it. I mean I can only speak about myself, and you know there's a lot of fear about actually having a child as well. I mean society,
yeah,
the way, you know, it's so medicalized. I don't know if that's a word actually, but anyway, um, that you know that's very off-putting. The way, the whole way that it's been created in the Western world
yeah,
is so negative as well. You know, I mean, I think you know the reason why I was going to have children later was because my siblings and my best friend and so many people I know had such bad experiences of
yeah,
childbirth that it really actually put me off. So, you know, early on when I was younger, I thought,
yeah,
oh no, I'm not ready for that. I won't be ready that till I'm older, thinking
Yeah,
30s, that's when I'm going to be about ready. And then,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course, I split up with my boyfriend then. So, yeah, I mean, it's something you can't really plan.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think there's a lot of people not wanting to connect and actually make that commitment in relationships. So a lot of people don't want to have children for that reason too. So, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, hear this woman now. She has gone through much, and you did speak to it. It's in your own way, you made your contribution, and I thank you for it. So here you are journaling, and you're experiencing all of these changes as a woman coming from Western world, walking into the Asian type of mentality of living and life, and incorporating all of this, and you're on this beautiful island that has accepted you, and you are growing energetically. Everything is great, and you are now, as they say, as you're growing, and that growing is always an expansion. There's much pain in that growing. So, as you are learning about you, Alice, and within all of this stuff that's happening there on the island, how did you started relating to others, to people outside of you?
Yeah, that's a good point because in the UK I felt quite isolated. I felt, I felt it was quite difficult to relate to people. But here, there's so many
Yeah,
like-minded people. Because obviously I loved mantra. I mean, literally, I would say when I was in the UK for the first week, I was singing mantra
yeah,
all night. So, like you said about going off into other realms, yes, I
yeah,
did, and I was connected to the other worlds. But yeah, here there's so many single women, so that makes it really easy to connect because we have a lot in common. And a lot of women come here to heal. A lot of women come here to start a new life, but not feeling
yeah,
different
yeah,
from them, from the foreigners that come here. I felt like I was in the right place because everyone had a
yeah, yeah,
story. Everyone had a story of something, illness, breakup, blah blah blah. So it felt like, oh, I'm normal here. This is nothing unusual. So that's always good when you feel like you're
yeah,
like others, in that sense.
yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I have Threads of Enlightenment, is to let those that are listening feel that there's others, you know, you're not alone, and that in listening to the podcast, you can gain some insights to remind you that you're not alone, and not to give up, because you're so beautiful. There's so much depth about you and richness about you that I would, uh, I want you to experience that. So that's one of the reasons why we created this little space, so you can realize you're not alone. So here you are, you found your tribe, if you will. And finding one's tribe always helps propel you in your growth. And as you are now looking, you said it took you 7 years to finalize the book. Talk to us, Alice, about the genesis of that. Yeah, I know that it's usually micro crumbs that will lead to it, but then there's this moment when one decides, yeah, I think I'm going to do it. But sometimes we go through all this dance. What was that like as you are coming up to the fact that I'm going to write this book? Because now you are going to write it, but in writing, one must become vulnerable. You have to tell all the dark stuff. And becoming vulnerable, it takes a lot of courage. But sometimes, in some of us, it takes us a little while to get there. What was your journey like in that process?
It's quite long, as you can see. but but it all came out at the right time. Yeah, I mean, it was difficult for me. I mean, I wrote the book, like I said, I wrote the first draft of all the chapters in 2015 because I couldn't believe what had happened to me. I thought it's like that's not me. I really really had to cement what had happened because I thought I wouldn't even
Yeah.
believe myself. It was like I'd entered a movie. for like 8, 9 months. So yeah, so rereading the book and writing it and rereading the chapters and changing them. I spent many years on and off doing this, but I would get quite traumatized by reading what
Yeah.
had happened to me. It was bringing it up constantly to me. So I think that was also, like, people say, oh, was it cathartic? Well, I mean, yes, but I mean, it's just like it's just it was difficult. It was like I was reliving it every time. So, and I was thinking, oh, I don't want to be sharing this with people, but I knew I had to be authentic, and I knew I
Yeah.
had to do it. And as much as I tried to not do
Yeah.
it, I knew that one day I would, and I gave myself a hard time about it. But then eventually, my editor friend in the UK who I used to work with, I said, "Look, will you edit it? Because you know what, I just need an editor now. I need somebody to look at it because I'm sort of I'm
Yeah.
confused now. I don't know if I should put it out, but I trusted her. I said, well, look, here it is, and she read it and she started editing it, and she was like, there's a lot of trauma
Yeah.
in here, and I was like, yes, well, we can sort of, there are some good bits, some happy bits, but no, but she did a wonderful job editing it, and even just rereading it. Obviously, I've read it so many times I can't tell you, but what actually I found interesting is, like, the last 10 readings, you've
Yeah.
quoted it out. So I kept trying to read it from different angles. Like, what would my family read if they read this? What would be, or how, I was just trying to imagine it from, trying to
Yeah.
be different people. And, but every time I read it, I noticed something else. I noticed another story within the
Hmm.
story that I didn't even know that
Yeah.
I'd written. So I found that really, really interesting. That it was
Yeah.
multidimensional. I mean, we're
Yep. It is.
multidimensional, and the story is multidimensional. So you can read it on whatever level
Yeah.
you want or whatever layer. I mean, there's the obvious layer of the story, but there's other layers in there. And yeah, that only came to me in
Yeah.
2020, that I realized there were other layers to it, deeper layers, more universal layers. So yeah, I hope that
Yeah.
answers your
How did
question.
you move through it, Alice, when you were reading those traumatic moments after writing it down? And in many cases, you probably thought that you had dealt with it. And then here you are reading it and looking at it and having to move through. How did you do it since you were being traumatized repeatedly? How did you move through now where you made a statement that in the last 10 readings, you didn't basically see the trauma, you just saw additional aspects of it, deeper aspects. So how did you move through?
Well, I think I saw other aspects because I'd actually, I became sort of, it's like anything. When you read something, it has a less of an impact on you. You're seeing it more as a reader. You're not seeing it as like, that's me in pain, because it, the pain had been worked through in so many levels. Um, the pain that was coming through them was like, now other people are going to read it. I'm going to allow other people to read what
Yeah.
happened to me. So that was a level of pain. Um, but to work through it, as I mean, different modalities are lots of massage, lots of like I said, breath work, sound journeys, all these ways of bringing everything out of me, and making me really delve deep into who I am. And I came to conclusion, I'm a completely
Yeah.
different person now. I there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with me. I've had an experience that that was, parts of it were amazing, the connection I had with spirit and what was going on there, but has made me more of who I am, the person I needed to be. And I believe that everything that happens to us, whether it's a breakup or redirection, a redirection in our career or anything, is just showing us that that's
Yeah.
where we need to be, you know, because otherwise we would just be stuck, and we'd just live this life. We'd never do anything. We'd just be doing, be trapped in the wheel of the
Hmm.
rat race, and we would never be out of it. So it gave me a lot of freedom, and yeah, to discover, the depth of me is so much greater, than the depth of feeling. It's like what I always think is that, feel it's like when you've experienced death, like, death of my father in my 30s, and when you've experienced deep
Yeah.
pain, deep loss, then your capacity to love is greater. It's
Yeah.
infinite, because you have, you know, everything has come through you. I mean, I remember feeling, well, I wasn't even like, I was out of my body. I, a grain of sand, I wasn't
Yeah.
even that big. I mean, I was just, everything was stripped
Mhm.
away. Back, in 2014, everything was disappeared, and including, what was deemed, that I needed to
Yeah.
be sectioned, um, because of my grief, because I felt it
Yeah.
so deeply. I felt such a deep connection. I could not assimilate the change, because it
Yeah.
was so sudden, being told whilst half asleep in bed. I mean, I was in another, half of me was in one world, half of me was in this physical world, and the other half was in a whole
Yeah.
different realm.
So here you are. You've gone through much, Alice. You've the darkness. I tell people they're designed to awaken the sleeper within us, and that sleeper is the creator. You get in contact with your soul. Usually, then your mind, your natural mind, you're living life that out of that realm. But when you are in darkness, you have the subconscious mind that is your soul, and you need to have a conversation with yourself. That's one of the most powerful encounters you'll ever have on this planet. And when you get a chance to love that individual and give that individual permission to now guide you, your life will change. Things will begin to manifest. You will learn more about you. You'll understand certain things, and then you move through. And we are not perfect, and I don't want to be. In my mind,
Mm-hmm.
perfection is the enemy of personal development. If I'm perfect, I don't need to do anything else. So I love my imperfectness because it gives me the opportunity to um, to dig deeper and to find out more. And all of you folks who have been listening to Alice's journey, that have uh, experienced extreme trauma, especially so sudden when it comes to your family, everything that you held, and you're told that is how you ought to be. When it's ripped away from you, how she was able to put her life together by allowing certain changes. And I want you guys, I'm going to provide everything for Alice so you guys can get her book. Get that book because that book housed within it is power. I always say to people that when you're reading, read with purpose. Find a place by which you are going to put yourself in a state of to receive. In that state, have your favorite tea or coffee or whatever your favorite thing, but it puts you in a state of relaxation. And when you're there, the mind, they teach us, is that the theta brain waves begin to become and get you in a state. And when you read, those words will jump from one page straight into you and change your life. And I have a woman, and I know she didn't go into a lot of things, but they're in that book. And I want you guys to purchase that book so that you can get deepness of who she is and what she has done and where she has come from. Alice, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's
It's
an
great to
honor.
chat.